Oliver.
Hello, Brendan Corrigan. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
I don't know. It seemed okay my side anyway. I'm not sure. Every now and again, I think there are gremlins in the work in this StreamYard thing. But they keep on telling us on YouTube videos, because it's one of the most annoying ads, some very hairy guy comes on and he goes, "Hey everybody, I'm a StreamYard user and I hope you're using it. And I've been podcasting for the last 20 years, blah, 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 blah." Yeah, it's just like, for goodness sake, please don't play that ad anymore. You know, when you're in the middle of watching a video on YouTube and then they just come on. With no warning whatsoever. But anyway, look, StreamYard is wonderful. It is the best application out there. I've done my bit for StreamYard. How has your week been anyway, Oliver?
Pretty good.
Yeah, good. Do you want to know what I got up to this week?
Go on.
I pushed the boat out, or actually, more correctly speaking, I pushed out the walking steps and headed off to Copa. Now, it's only about a 12-kilometer trek from where I am here. Just head over the La Conejera hill in Suba and walk along. The only thing is the walk there is not that fun because it's a very small road, narrow road, I should say, and you're competing with traffic for a lot of the walk. But when I got there and the other side of Copa, walking up around the hills there, it's kind of nice. So something different, just a little day escape from Bogotá by foot. Over these last few 15 months, it's been difficult. But anyway, maybe things are going to change.
It's funny you should use the word Copa or mention the town of Copa, because and also mention YouTube adverts, because I've been getting a lot of adverts recently for Kotex, which I understand is a sanitary pad brand. So
okay, I'm not.
So well done, my ad blockers. Clearly doing their job pretty well.
I'm just wondering what you're viewing. I think we should move swiftly on, Holly. And tonight, it's the second installment of our bite-sized Bogotá series on tonight's Bogotá Nights, guys. And remember what it is? Our tagline, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show. And from La Candelaria, where we started about a month ago when we did our first bite-sized Bogotá, you can check that out on YouTube. It's still available, or on our respective Facebook pages on Bogotá Post or on Wrong Way Corrigan. But we're moving the virtual pinhead slightly north to Chapinero, to be precise. Now, some say that this is the real beating heart of Bogotá, a sector that mixes hassle-free living, relatively speaking, affordable quality dining, and a lively nightlife, all with a cosmopolitan sprinkling. What do you think? Are you happy in Chappy, or do you find it all rather crappy? Send us your Chapinero comments right now by using the live message facility, and your messages will appear on the screen here. Or if you're viewing or watching this, I should say, recorded, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet, the handle being @Bogotá Post, everybody's favorite English language newspaper, with the hashtag Bogotá Nights, the name of this show. And of course, it is all about viewer interaction. We do want to hear your thoughts, but that is to come. But unless you've been completely avoiding contact with other Colombians or have been oblivious to a spike in the number of the national football team shirts on display, you're probably aware that there's a big game on right now. Yes, La Selección de Colombia is in Lima taking on Peru as we speak in an important World Cup qualifier. We'll, of course, be keeping an eye on that game throughout the show, but Ollie, new manager Reinaldo Rueda, of course, his first qualifier game, caused a mini stir in his second return, we say his second coming, but he caused a mini stir here by not selecting James Rodriguez, not only for these qualifiers, but also for the upcoming Copa America, which will, we now know, be played in Brazil. James didn't exactly accept his deselection quietly, did he?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. It appears to be that Rueda considers him unfit, and James himself considers himself fit. So this is going to be a difficult one to square. I mean, I have some sympathy with him, especially for the Copa America. You can see other examples. For example, England with Harry Maguire, who's unlikely to be fit for the first couple of games, but if we progress, will feature as we go on. James probably is thinking something similar.
Yeah, but do you think it was wise for him to come out with a statement? To go publicly, kind of, because now it's created this perception, whether it's true or not, that there's a bit of a split there almost. That Rueda said, well, we talked about this kind of behind closed doors, consulting with his club, obviously, which is Everton, with the team doctor at La Selección and everything. And it seemed like, well, they came to an agreement that now wasn't the time for James, and he was better off looking after himself in a personal capacity and get himself up to speed and back to full fitness. But then he comes out with this statement kind of going, well, I was available and I'm disappointed. So it kind of now has this air of there being bad blood there now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to wonder what he thought he would achieve with this. It's not like Rueda was about to turn around and say, oh, yeah, you're right, actually, it was a bit of an oversight. You would have to imagine they spoke about this already privately. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what James thought he was going to achieve. I don't really see the point of it. He might be thinking that Rueda is more temporary and he's more permanent. But, I don't sense that there's great support for him, to be honest. Apart from people who never really watch football, most people seem to be on the coach's side here.
Yeah, interesting you said, like, the people who don't watch football, because he is the pin-up boy of La Selección de Colombia, those who kind of only maybe temporarily engage with La Selección and have a passing interest in it. Of course, it's like, oh, where's James? Yeah, I can imagine a lot of people tonight maybe who might be just casually watching the game and kind of going, oh, where's that James guy that I'm used to seeing? So, yeah, no, it's true. But we saw a few comments, and this is a fair reflection of those who do know a little bit more about football, which kind of like, yeah, build a bridge, get over it, James, and on we go, and hopefully can get 3 points tonight in Lima. I guess
It's very much worth pointing out, I feel, as well, that he's been struggling for both form and fitness with Everton since, Christmas time. So, limited sympathy, I think.
Whisper it. Could a return to Real Madrid be on the cards now that Ancelotti has gone back to the Bernabeu? Maybe he'll bring James with him. Well, like, that would be telling. If he kind of goes, no, I'm not bothered about bringing James, it's kind of
I wonder if Everton would be biting off their hands, frankly. It's a really heavy wage that they're paying, and at the moment, I'm not sure that they'll be able to get much money back. But this is all for the future.
Yeah, of course, another big mentioning pin-up boys of La Selección de Colombia, Falcao, another man, maybe less surprising now. He's got a lot of miles on the clock. He's had his injuries and stuff like that, and obviously his career trajectory has been kind of going in one direction only, although people could say the exact same thing about James. But he's not there either. So kind of the two big stars that we were used to for the last few years are not there. And I mean, again, the casual observer maybe looking at that Colombian team tonight would kind of go, who are these guys? The casual observer, I'm saying. We're not talking about our Karen Worswicks or Frank Wiegans or people like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see in a way, I think. I always think there's something nice about having domestic players. And let's not forget, by the way, that when we're looking at Colombia's firepower up front, Muriel and Duvan Zapata, these are not chumps. These are guys that play together at club level in Italy for Atalanta and do very well. I mean, they've qualified for the Champions League 2 years running, which is a hell of an achievement for a club like Atalanta.
Yeah, no, of course, you're spot on with that. It's a good Colombian team. Well, anyway, I can't speak from being a Republic of Ireland man. We had our first win in 12 games or something against the mighty Andorra in a friendly this afternoon. After going a goal down, we managed to win 4-1. But no, it's a decent team, and I guess just kind of, I feel like we're almost doing a live sports show tonight because there is the game on right now as we speak. But to fill you in, of course, it's Peru tonight, and they're in Lima, which just kicked off.
A chance have a goal there, I think.
Well, yeah,
I think.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just checking. 8 minutes on the clock, 0-0. But it's looking at the results today, Argentina held in Buenos Aires against Chile, and now they had I think 7 shots on goal compared to Chile's 1. So I can imagine Chile were playing rather defensive, but Argentina did go a goal up, and Alexis Sanchez pulled back the equaliser for Chile. So that's not bad, because Argentina come here. They come to Barranquilla on Tuesday night. So Argentina have dropped points there, and also Chile are still behind Colombia in the overall standings. Then you had another draw in Montevideo, which is kind of a surprise. Paraguay holding Uruguay there. So that's relatively surprising, and kind of no surprise that Bolivia, in the ridiculous altitude of La Paz, had a 3-1 win over Venezuela. Pobrecitos Venezuela now are rock bottom of the table with just 1 point. And tomorrow, Ecuador plays Brazil. Yeah,
and that was, of course, where Colombia picked up their points. And that was a rotten Venezuela side. I can't imagine they'd be much better.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I have a soft spot, as some people might know who read my blogs and have listened to the podcast, for Venezuela, but because they had a very good under 21 side there a few years ago that got to a World Cup final against your lot, wasn't it? England, a number of years ago. They got to the final. Somebody might correct me on that, but they certainly got to the semi-final. I think they did get to the final. But to bring those players through, obviously, it's going to take development, investment, and you can imagine the Football Federation of Venezuela. Well, I'm not sure how well ran they are when you consider what's happening in that country. But anyway,
yeah, there's other stuff going on, I think we could say.
Yeah, that's what we'll say. But sticking with the football theme, though. Because, we said it's Argentina then on Tuesday, and we'll keep an eye on what's happening in Lima if there are goals. I don't think anyone's watching it in my house, this abode, because I can't hear any cheering or anything. So they're not football fans here, I think.
So it says here, Tapia had a shot. That's Tapia, not Tapir. He's not a large ungulate. A right-footed shot from more than 35 yards missed. And before that, Luis Diaz of Colombia shot from the centre. So not much going on.
This does feel like Sky Sports when they're doing the Premier League. Oh, we've had a shot on target there at St James's Park. Ollie, what's happened?
We do have a writer who looks like Chris Kamara.
Oh, well, we should get him. Well, I know the guy you're talking about. Do you remember that Chris Kamara moment?
Yes, right. Everybody does. Everybody does. So that's the only thing anyone knows, Chris Kamara. I'd imagine even Chris Kamara's wife only really knows him from that.
And if people have no idea what we're on about, look up Chris Kamara, that's Kamara with a K, on YouTube, and player sent off. And you'll have a little bit of a giggle. But of course, after the show, don't do it now, or after the Colombia-Peru game as well. But I wanted to mention the Copa America, because last week we were on the show, news just broke that Argentina weren't going to host it, and we were kind of wondering what the hell is going to happen. But now we know Brazil have taken it on. Jair Bolsonaro, what a president! He's decided he was going to take one for the Latin American and South American team and host it there. But so the tournament's meant to go ahead as scheduled, which means Colombia will play Ecuador on Sunday week, which in some ways seems, I don't know, it just seems all very odd in this very odd period that we're living in. But of course, at the same time, you're going to have the Euros in Europe, so I guess maybe it won't seem as odd. But I don't know, football matches in these weird times of protests and coronavirus, and having a big international tournament, to me, something doesn't match up in all of this. The excitement doesn't seem the same anyway.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, part of that is because there seems to be a Copa America every, year. Certainly, it's kind of almost comical in a way. That does starve you, I think, a bit of the excitement.
Yeah, certainly. Now, they were meant to get it back to normality because they were readjusting. There was a centenary celebration and things like that, and then they were going to have it every 4 years in line with the Euros. But well, because of obviously now the cancellation that we've had the 2020 edition, 2021, but we'll see what happens over the next few years. Of course, we do like to hear from you guys, and thanks to Jacob Toms for getting in touch. Not specifically related to what we're talking about, but he said he's too much time on his hands if he's tuning into us. Well, thanks for that, Jacob. Thanks for the thumbs up. But how is the city? And are we feeling positive about the next couple of years? Well, I can only really talk about the next couple of days to feel positive about it from a personal point of view. But I think Bogotá rolls to its own beat a lot of the time, doesn't it? Look,
I'm
Go on, Ollie. Well, I was just going to say that, yes, there are a lot of problems. The pandemic, we've got these ongoing protests, which we are going to talk about in a few minutes' time. There's all those issues. Are we on the cusp of some grand change? Well, next year's presidential election will tell us a lot about that, I guess. But am I positive about the city? I guess if I can stay in it, yeah. Ollie, how about you?
I'm very similar, Brendan. If you're forced to leave, then I'm a lot more negative. No, but on the serious side, look, yeah, I mean, I do feel good about the next few years. I think a little bit depends on what happens in the elections next year, but generally, I think long-term future for Colombia is much as it's ever been, which is generally positive. Colombia's starting to get towards the middle-income trap. And that's still an excellent problem. One of the positives, in a way, I suppose, about the pandemic is that it's set the economy slightly back, which means we're a little bit further away from the middle-income trap. So that's in its full-blown iteration. Other than that, yeah, I mean, generally positive. I think a lot of people, Jacob, are not looking at the economic indicators in Colombia, which are that it's bouncing back faster than people thought.
Yeah, well, as we've often stated on this program as well, there tends to be, there is a tendency amongst many Colombians, and I can relate to this being an Irishman, that to accentuate the negatives in everything and say that everything is looking worse than it really is. But yeah, look, it's got its ongoing perpetual problems, but as we talked about, and to take the Steven Pinker line, that things in a sense have never actually been better when you look at many of the indicators. But talking about things being very good, and cheers again, Jacob, for actually wasting some of your day to tune into us. We appreciate that, and we do appreciate the messages. But of positivity again, and we have to mention, because we mentioned him last week, and I thought I might have given him a commentator's curse by saying Egan Bernal was a shoo-in, but he went on to do the business and win the Giro d'Italia. Ollie.
Yeah, and I mean this is a huge win for Egan personally, and it really, I think, underlines his credentials as a potential serial Grand Tour winner. So Nairo had the big breakthrough, but it always felt a bit suspect. He couldn't quite do it in the Tour, and he couldn't sort of deliver again repeatedly. And that single Giro always, and later got a Vuelta, but it always felt a little bit like it was with a bit of an asterisk and so on and so forth. And there was a bit of a thing about that with Egan's win in the Tour, where he won without winning a stage, a very strong team, a relatively weak field. None of that takes away from his achievement doing it at such a young age. But equally, there is a point where you start to think, okay, there are a few caveats there. Can he win again? Can he follow up? Can he get back on? He's just proven that. He's proven that his injury wasn't as bad as had been feared at one point. And it was a pretty strong not the strongest field in the world, but certainly not weak. He's got a very good chance of going on to take the Vuelta de España towards the end of the year in September. So, I mean, certainly if he does that, you'd have to say well on his way to certainly becoming the best Colombian. I mean, I'd say he already is. But certainly on his way to becoming, one of the greats.
Yeah.
Remember, he's just 24.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's only a young guy. But a couple of things. Number one, am I right in saying that you kind of had associated Nairo Quintana with maybe being in previous episodes last year, being the sunshine cyclist, when things are going well? Was that Nairo? And the second thing is for the layman, because I know you're more of a cycling expert, certainly than I am anyway. Like I was kind of going, so he'll go to the Tour de France, but
not this year.
Like that would be a ridiculous ask because it's just 6 weeks away.
Yeah, very few. I mean, certainly not somebody in his condition. I mean, Chris Froome tried it, but he was the first big rider to even try a Giro Tour double in quite a few years. And of course, that was when he was at the top of his, shall we say, golden period. And don't forget, of course, Egan's same team. But actually, it's funny.
What are you insinuating there?
But it's funny what you say about fair weather cycling. That's a really interesting point, and I think one of the real big markers about Egan, two things. One is that at various points in the race, the pressure was really put on him. Yes, he's got a very strong team with very strong domestiques, but even so, it was him that rallied. It was him that fought back against it, and much more encouragingly, huge stage win in atrocious conditions to put time into his rivals. I mean, we're talking snow and sleet. Definitely, this was a victory with some degree of adversity.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Stunning stuff. And guys, watch this space. Ollie doesn't even know this, but I did put a word into Egan Bernal's team to kind of go, look, we do a live show. We're practically in Zippakira. Well, I am. Why don't you come on and have an interview with us for half an hour one night? So we'll watch this space. Maybe he will. I was surprised that he speaks pretty decent English, or at least in the interviews.
Why is that a surprise?
I don't know. I just didn't expect him to. I mean, come on. How many Colombians speak excellent?
He rides for a British team. His managers are all British, and also there's a whole it's a polyglot training room. So they'll just communicate in English to make things easier most of the time.
Okay.
Because otherwise they've got to. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. But actually, just so you know, Brendan, you might be surprised. For example, Pep Guardiola in Bayern Munich was communicating in English with everybody.
Okay, well, as the international language, of course, it does make sense in the dressing room where you'd have so many nationalities, for sure. By the way, as we said, guys, we do like to get your comments, and we're having our second installment of our bite-sized Bogotá series. About a month ago, 4 episodes ago, we did one on La Candelaria. We're kind of moving from area to area to pick out the good, the bad, and the ugly of different barrios or neighborhoods in Bogota. We're going to be talking about Chapinero just after the half-hour mark. So get your thoughts on that. Do you live there? Did you live there? Would you like to live there? Do you hate the place? Let us know. Or do you know any hidden gems there that we may not know of? By the way, as well, Walter, thanks for getting in touch. Walter Suarez, he says, is there a reason not to? Are you saying, is that a reason not to be positive? I like your attitude. Even though my blood type is B negative.
I think you're saying it's a reason not to focus on the negatives, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe that's it. You see, you're focusing on the negatives now. Anyway, the Colombian masses would not be happy with us, Ollie, if we didn't mention the number one sport in Colombia. The 2 superstars from Colombia are competing at Roland Garros in the French Open, but Juan Sebastian Cabal and Robert Farah are into the third round.
We were just talking about doping, weren't we? Yeah, I don't. Does anybody take the French Open seriously? I thought it was. I thought it was. I thought it was very strange, all this fuss over Naomi Osaka not giving a press interview and then being kicked out or withdrawing. And I just thought, I don't think anybody watches the French tennis, do they?
It's just you've got a chip on your shoulder against the French, like you have with the Argentinians as well. Get over it. Come on, Ollie.
No, but they don't play on grass. Come on, what is this? It should be different sports. Like it's basically giant table tennis.
Well, in fairness, then the Colombians should be pretty good there because aren't most of the tennis courts here on clay, from what I can see, on concrete anyway, but not much on grass. By the way, Walter Suarez is saying that like it's no surprise that most top sports people do speak English. But I will, okay, maybe this is an exception, but I remember when Radamel Falcao went to Manchester United, he could hardly string three words together there in understandable English. So
that was quite a while ago, though. I mean, Walter's absolutely spot on. I mean, any international sport will just use English as a standard sort of language of communication. It's one of the things people used to say about Nairo Quintana, in fact, that he stayed at Movistar because he was scared of being in a non-Hispanophone environment.
Okay, interesting. But what I just do remember from the Giro d'Italia, one of the Italians won stage, and they were interviewing on ESPN in English afterwards, and he just gave up like halfway through the question.
Oh yeah, it's not everybody, but it's not unusual.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's some news before we get into Chapinero and all of that. Any no score though, by the way, in the Colombia?
No, it's all a lot of nothing at the moment.
Okay, so we mentioned when we take nothing.
Aggressive play, so the game is interrupted. That's a Peruvian is questioned.
Sounds anyway. It could be like a night out in Chapinero, which we'll be talking about in about 4 minutes' time. But protests, Ollie, because they're still ongoing. You could be forgiven for thinking with the news cycle this week that not much is happening, but. What exactly is happening, or do you even know?
Friday was pretty big. I have to say, last Friday was a relatively big affair. They had stages out. Interestingly, CUT were back out. CUT, the Comité Unificado de Trabajo. So that was... That was interesting. But apart from that, I would say Friday wasn't as big as it could have been. Yesterday was small beans, really. We had few people up in Eroes. We had a relatively smallish march of teachers from FECODE, leaving from the Parque Nacional down to Plaza Bolivar, where they met up with the Garda Indígena. I mean, again, it seems to be this cycle of getting big days and then nothing happening and then another big day. We could see that going on for quite some time, I think.
Yeah, because the Comité del Paro, the strike committee, have called on next Wednesday again to be a big one. It's almost like a taking over of Bogotá. So I guess if we were kind of thinking that we weren't saying really petering out, but maybe it was kind of take a little bit of a pause and then every couple of weeks perhaps hit a big one while they're still unhappy with everything that's happening. I guess that's maybe the strategy.
It's worth pointing out that some of their aims are being achieved anyway. I mean, there's a lot of preemptive wooden boards going up throughout Chapinero.
Yeah. Of course, talks that some of the blockades that have been disrupting in other parts of Colombia, transportation of goods and things like that some of them have been open now. That, I mean, I think you can get to Cali over land if you desired to. So some of those have been lifted. But anyway, Ali, I know we're kind of time is ticking on here. So Walter's just in with a comment on the strike. So before we move on, that strike leaders are said to have been threatened.
I'd be astonished if they hadn't been. I'd say one of the things that's really been noticeable in the past week or 10 days or so has been the rise of people getting violently angry or irritated by the strikes, or noticeably irritated. So we've had the first white shirt march in Bogotá, of course, last Sunday, which attracted a fair lot of counter campaigning as well. So the anti-paro and the anti-paro. So lots of stuff going on there. But also we saw that instant, a car driver driving a kid down who was trying to block him up at Héroes yesterday. Of course, down in Cali, we've seen all these disturbing videos. And again, what the truth of all this is very hard to understand. There definitely does seem to be a bit of a growing kind of anti-strike feeling.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see, and this ties in now, I guess it's a kind of nice segue, because 8th of June, next Tuesday, Monday being a public holiday, and then Bogotá, anyway, is meant to more or less go back to business as usual, with schools reopening, opening hours kind of being normal. There's some restrictions on certain events and things like that. They have that amber warning. But I guess if the city's getting back to normal and all that, then those who aren't really 100% behind the strikes, that might be a reason that you're seeing a rising resentment or anger there. Because, Ollie, you'd be forgiven for thinking, reading or listening or watching the news here, that COVID is now a non-event. But that's not the case.
It's amazing, isn't it? We're actually having our highest death numbers. We're averaging around 500 a day over much of the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that's really a surprise. I mean, it seems like an odd point. UCIs all over the country are going into absolutely critical mode. I mean, I don't say, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. 3 more regions today. I think Barichara was one of the ones I noticed. Going into the position where they're saying, well, look, we can't admit people into, we're over 100% now for UCI. We can't take people in. So yeah, it does seem to be an interesting time to be doing this, and Claudia Lopez does appear to be simply putting up her hands and saying, whatever, I tried, you're not listening to me, I can't control you and I can't control the police, so just get on with it, I guess. She dressed it up in kind of prettier language, said something about having listened to the people, which is just an egregious lie, I think. It does seem bizarre.
Well, just because on the other side of it as well, and this is important, I guess, for international viewers and foreigners, as many of our viewers are, that the PCR test requirement now, they've done away with that, at least, whether it's forever or just a temporary measure for a few months or whatever to help that they can, in the hope that they can bring in more tourists or something. But that's been done away with as of, I think, straight away, the health ministry announced. And then for domestic flights, you don't need to use the Corona app. That was a requirement, apparently. I haven't taken a domestic flight during this, or any flight during this pandemic. But, what do you make of that, to lift the PCR test requirement? Like when you see other countries taking a very softly approach. And by the way, Walter, I see your comments, and I know that'll probably bring a smile to Ollie's face, because every time he talks about COVID deaths to me, he'll go, I know, Brendan, I know you're going to say with COVID, not exactly from COVID. So I hear where you're coming from. I don't want to get into that whole debate now. You can check out my Wrong Way Corrigan blog, and you know where I'm coming from on that, Walter. But just about that, like, it's funny, like Canada, all the indicators are very positive, but in large parts of Canada, they're like, no, let's just wait. And here it's kind of like, which for me is somewhat refreshing, like, let's get ahead, just move on.
Yeah, it is bizarre. I hear what Walter's saying, and I do think there probably is some over-reporting, and there is a bit of a problem when you have somebody who had COVID and then, let's say, had a heart attack. What do you do? Did that weaken it? Did it bring on the heart attack? Where do we put these things? And it is a serious statistical problem. Generally, though, I'd say, if anything, Latin American countries in general tend to be underreporting COVID deaths. It's a big scandal, of course, in Peru this week about reporting of COVID deaths, and it turns out that actually COVID mortality is a lot higher in Peru than had been considered previously. Of course, Brazil has had its issues for a long time. Argentina recently had a reevaluation of its death numbers, etc., etc., etc. I think you're right, though. It's a box of frogs, and let's not open it.
Yeah, well, anyway, let's put it this way. It won't be the last time we'll be talking about COVID and the pandemic. I'm sure we'll be mentioning it maybe in next week's show as well. It comes up in every edition. It has to. But let's get on to our main topic. 25 minutes to do this. We usually go right on the half-hour mark, but, we got carried away today. By the way, Walter and Jacob, the two guys who've been commenting frantically here, are you guys, I take it you know Chapinero, do you live there? Did you live there? What do you think of it? Because we are talking about in our bite-sized Bogotá series, it's Barrio Número Dos, from La Candelaria to Chapinero. And Ali, when you think of Chapinero, what springs to mind?
I think in many ways, I always think of it as being the heart of Bogotá. In the way of, I always think it's the most kind of, it's the most Bogotano zone in some ways, I think, in that it kind of reflects a lot of what Bogotá is. It has all the bits of Bogotá. So a lot of bits of Bogotá that don't exist, right out in the sticks. People often say that's much more authentic. But I think Chapinero is the one part of Bogotá where all of that comes together in one place. There's some obviously very, very rich people. There's also some very, very poor people. And you've got kind of everything mashed in together.
Well, okay. Few comments here. Now, Angela, lovely to know that you're watching us, maybe with one eye on the Colombia-Peru game as well. I'm not sure if you're a big football fanatic, but we were kind of debating this, Tesequillo, because in our head there is this idea that Chapinero is that kind of Parque Lourdes and maybe a circle of about 1 kilometre around there, but it's also, you've got the three very distinct Chapineros as well. You've got Chapinero Alto, then Central, and then that kind of forgotten part for some people, the other side of Caracas. It won't come as any surprise to some people that I lived slightly just on that other side of Caracas for a little bit of time a few years ago. But Tesequillo, I guess, officially, is it in the greater?
No, absolutely
no, it's not.
No, of course it's not. But Angela does make a really useful point. So most people wouldn't consider where I live to be Chapinero. Now, some people do. When I tell people where I live, some people just instantly go, oh, Chapinero. Most people, I think, when they say Chapinero, they're not thinking of the locality. They're thinking of the barrio, which, would be a good 2 or 3 kilometers further north, at least, I would say. But yeah, where I am, I think, culturally we feel much more Tesequillo. But we do have our flashes of Chapinero, plenty of artisan beer, barbershops.
Yeah, well, because again, if we're coming back to kind of what springs to mind with Chapinero, for me, you asked me this earlier when we were doing our little bit of research, if I can call it that, for the show, and just immediately in my head, 1980s came into my head. Now, not 1980s Ireland, maybe 1980s UK or something. But I don't know, just the architecture and the vibe or something. I don't know, just came to my head. If I was thinking of putting it in a period. Now, obviously, it's got some very modern parts and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of kind of. Can I say rough and ready?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of how Soho used to be. When I was young, you'd be walking through Soho and it was genuinely, back in the day. I mean, now it's just very, 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 very gomelo. But walking through Soho back in the day used to be genuinely seedy and grotty. And even when I lived in London, it definitely still had a lot of its kind of, independent stores, really cheap places to buy, vodka for £3 a bottle and that sort of thing. A lot of homeless people, a lot of prostitution, all of that. But then also you did have, rich people going to work and all kinds of this big mashup. And again, that's really what I feel when I'm in Chapinero.
Yeah, well, Walter, makes an interesting point. Like he wouldn't like to live there. I'm not sure if he'd like to live there with his 2 kids. And like we were saying in terms of, okay, it's a nice place perhaps for nightlife, and we'll come back to that in a second because it's obviously well known for a particular sector or a section of the community as well. And maybe eating out in certain, and of course, Zona Hey, which is officially Chapinero as well, but that kind of, you tie that in with Zona Rosa, Zona Te, just in terms of style, if you're thinking of the more rustic Chapinero, so to put it. But like, if you had kids, like, okay, there's Parque Nacional, but that's a bit of a walk down. There's the trek up into the mountains, but that's got like it's irregular hours. Las Delicias, isn't that it?
And you're really restricted about when you can go.
Exactly. And then, like, if you want to bring your kids to a centro comercial where maybe there's like a not a theme park, but a center for doing things, like in Centro Comercial Santa Fe here, which I'm near, there's different things for the kids. There's Diver City, which it's closed now because of the pandemic, but there's other things. They even have a section of trampolines. So a Centro Comercial with all those activities and attractions. Around Chapinero, there's not really much of that, is there? I mean, you certainly...
that sounds like a goal.
It sounds like we've had a goal, Ollie.
I believe, Brendan, that's the goal.
Well, you're meant to be the reporter.
That's a goal.
You are slightly closer to Lima than me, so I'm going to say that you're in Lima. But Angela is not going to tell us who scored because she says she's only a football fan in World Cups. Can we get a goal? I'm trying to check out my live update here, but it hasn't updated. Mine is still on a few minutes behind, I think. We'll get it in a second.
There we go. Colombia 1, Peru 0. Not my words, but the words are flashscore.com. We haven't got the commentary yet, though, so I'm sure that'll come. Jerry Mina.
Mina, the Everton, the one Everton man that is in the squad.
It's in the back of the net. That was a goal. Jerry Mina, always a threat at set pieces. Anyway, so Chapinero. I mean, look, I've got friends with children in Chapinero. And, I would say on the other side of that, there's a lot of grottiness, but also that gives them a good grounding on what life is really like, rather than, living in the slightly false atmosphere of maybe a conjunto or whatever. I'd also say that there's theatres every 5 seconds. There's loads of cultural events and things that you can get to. So, there's a lot really going on. It doesn't, parks are not the be-all and end-all for children, especially little children.
Yeah. Well, actually, does the other the famous podcaster here, but I'll call him a friend of the show. He's probably never listened to one episode. Richard McCall, I think he lives there when he's not up on the coast. I think he's got a place in Chapinero. And he's
on the coast. You mean when he's in that hotel of his that is got to be hundreds of kilometers from any kind of sea?
Anything north of Bucaramanga for me is the coast. In Mompox, isn't it, where he does live? But he's there with kids.
I would say Mompox is not as bad as Valledupar. Valledupar is costeño. Yeah, sure it is. It's in a department that literally doesn't even have a beach. But anyway,
we're getting off topic. But there are people with children, of course, living in that area. So I guess it depends what kind of life you're looking for, both yourself as a parent, whatever, and then the children.
One of the reasons I wouldn't live further up in Chapinero is because of my dogs. It would be very hard to walk them properly if I only had like Lourdes and hippies, to work with.
Yeah, because that's that lack of green space, really.
I can't take my dogs to the theatre. I can't say. It's not very easy to go, but we're really going to experience life's worldly delights in here. They'll just run around and bark. So yeah, that's
might be more interesting and more entertaining than the production that's on at the time you're there, depending what it is.
But actually, I think there is a thing. I mean, look, you don't have to live in Chapinero, and I can imagine lots of reasons why you wouldn't want to live in Chapinero with a family. One thing I would say is, though, that visiting Chapinero should be something that you absolutely should be doing fairly regularly, I think, with children. And there's one very good reason for that, which is that it's definitely your best bet in Bogotá to see same-sex couples holding hands in the street. And if you want to educate your child onto, what normal relationships look like, that's the best part of Bogotá to be in. And I think, actually, there's a really big part of that. I remember vividly as a child going to places like Soho in London and just thinking, oh, my God, we don't have anything like this in Bristol. What the hell is going on? And it really opened my eyes, really expanded it. And I can imagine that that's not an insignificant thing for lots of children. Now, I'm not saying, take a 6-year-old into Teatron, but absolutely, I think there's nothing wrong with, oh yeah, we're walking past a bar and there's two men, in the window kissing. That's normal. That happens. That's regular. That's not anything weird. I think that's a very positive thing for people to see, especially in a city which can be homophobic and a country which absolutely, definitely has serious problems with homophobia.
I'm just waiting for a message to come in from the former Procuraduría.
Ordóñez.
Ordóñez, yeah. He'll be writing in. Take this program off the air. Chappy gay, of course, is Angela, rightly, as people do kind of fondly call it, affectionately call it, I should say. Now, I will also say, Ollie, add to that, there will be a bit of a difference from bringing your child walking around Chapinero, as you said, to see same-sex couples or whatever, and bringing them down around Santa Fe in the Centro, which is a rather different atmosphere as well. I'm not sure what I want to be bringing my 6-year-old down around there, but that's another thing. People can check that out, what Santa Fe is, if they don't know what I'm on about. You know what I'm on about, Ollie? You look confused.
Yeah, I do, but that just seems like a weird direction. Anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. But you mentioned in passing there, and we have to mention this because it's an institution now, and indeed, maybe if you are from the LGBTIQ community, you're kind of going, it's been taken over now by heterosexuals. Teatron, because
is Teatron a gay club anymore?
I was there like twice, 3 times. Usually, I'm pretty drunk when I go there. The last time was with a few Irish, and one of them was gay, and he was like, "Come on, we got to go there." But the vibe that night, I don't know. I didn't stay that long, but I'm not a nightclub man anyway, so I'm a bad reference.
It's exactly the last place I can imagine you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Where's the Bowley Rana? I could get myself into trouble looking for that.
But yeah, no, I mean, you're right, and I think it's such a. I would say it's a large part of my liking Bogotá is the fact that Chappy Gay exists, not to kind of say that I'm always taking advantage of it, but just to know it's there is a real positive thing for the city, I think. And incidentally, as you said, tourism in terms of kind of pink pound or pink peso tourism, it's absolutely enormous.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing like it is an institution really now. I'm guessing though, I don't know, do we have anyone watching who frequents the gay bars of Chapinero, but I'm guessing there's probably now new places that have kind of become the truer place for the community rather than
of course,
now Teatron, yeah. That kind of, because if we are, by the way, talking of kind of hidden places, there is a bar, Ollie, and I think you know more about this than I, well, you know of it anyway. I was there once and I don't remember much because it's one of the few 24-hour bars in this city. It's somewhere
No,
around Chapinero.
almost. Yeah. It's a clandestine bar which kicks off at about 2 a.m. And as far as I'm aware, it doesn't really close until, gosh, only knows. I've never been in there past about 8 or 9 in the morning. That place is still running. I cheerfully saw the owner clandestinely operating a few weeks ago. So that's definitely still going. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you talk to the owner, I don't know. Well, we won't get anyone into trouble here, but there's the Doors bar in La Candelaria, and there's a particular gentleman who stands out that's usually on the door at the Doors bar, who has links to this. It's on the Caracas, isn't it? If I'm correct in saying.
Well, we won't go any further than that. But
Okay.
it's it's down there.
But speaking more kind of normal but alternative bars, Chapinero is the home of rock bars. I mean, nearly every second bar around Parque Lourdes is a rock bar.
Well, they've sort of died out a little bit. There's not that many of them left these days, unfortunately. There's sort of a bit of encroachment from Chappy Gay on one side, and then there's pandemic effects on the others. But there are still some huge ones. So Open Light, or Open Licht, as it's affectionately known, still running a good old trade. I was in there as well the other night. And of course, there's places like Gigante. There's a BBC there. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, I remember when I first came to Bogota, it was one of my favorite bars that there's ever been in Bogota. There used to be a very unpretentious little tienda just opposite the Kai. It's a pizza place now, but it used to just play very, very, very heavy metal, especially midweek. So you go in there on a Wednesday or a Thursday and they'd just be playing really, really extreme metal. And then Fridays and Saturdays are a little bit more, for the regular crowds. They put on things like Metallica and Maiden. But
are the Spice Girls for me?
No, not that far. Not quite. No, not quite that far. Not quite that far, but still a bit heavier than the other places. And just a really lovely place to go and get drunk. But that's fallen by the wayside. And a lot of those tiny little ones have as well, which I guess the world changes.
Well, it does, of course. There was a club now. You're kind of sparking a memory in me there. Around it's years ago, back in my early days in the city, so 2012, 13. It was a basement entry. I think it was on the Septima, around 40 something. Like so, it was. You took a stairs down to get in. And they specialised in these massive tubs of big liter. Glasses of beer. I can't remember the name though. Do you know
there's a number of that. Was that the one that had like the little fake beach inside?
Okay.
They had sand down, so it was meant to feel like you're in a tropical paradise.
I think in one section because there were different sections.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh, or are you thinking of much further up, much closer to Hippies? Are you thinking of the Elf and Goblin place?
No, I know that one. I know Treffen, but it was a little bit further south of Treffen.
Yeah, okay. All of those places have succeeded quite well. I used to live up on 65 and Quinto when I first came to Bogota. And I used to go out with a friend who lived quite close by. And I remember once we walked into one of those Septima kind of student-y bars. And I remember the guy just looked at us, and I was wearing a kind of particularly extravagant outfit.
The
guy just looked at us like, not with those trousers. But then he offered, if we bought a bottle of aguardiente, we could enter. But we did.
Don't get me started on that silly practice, and we won't go down this wormhole. But this idea that you have to buy a bottle of spirits to get into some of these clubs, it's like I find that ridiculous. I just want a beer. I don't want.
Go somewhere else. I mean, it makes sense to have certain places with certain. Like I can see it as from a trader's point of view, you don't want you don't want somebody nursing a pint all night.
Yeah, but come on. I'm not going to be nursing a pint all night. But anyway, they don't know that, I know. Fair enough. I have to mention, though, it would be remiss of me not to mention a panaderia or two in Chapinero. And there are two that serve my purposes wonderfully. They're on the 65, just up from the Septima, so technically Chapinero Alto. One of them is called Fanny's. It's on like Quinta with 65, or just up from the Quinta. And then there's another one. Its name I'm not sure of, but both of them you can get your pokerones. Well, I think Fanny's have stopped now selling the grande since the pandemic kicked in, which I don't like. But your cheap and cheerful panaderias, and you can also get yourself merry there before you might go to a place that is charging you a little bit more for a beer or two. I always think you have to think economically. But two, they're on the 65, and there is actually a hostel there, which its name escapes me. But because when we talked about La Candelaria, obviously that's hostel central. But there are now a few. I know it's more Airbnb, but there are some
Airbnbs. I was in. I was queuing to use an ATM this week behind a couple of Germans. I think they were speaking German, so it could be German, Austrian, Swiss, whatever. But they're just But again, I always feel like when I'm in Candelaria, I'm very conscious of being foreign. Whereas when I'm in Chapinero, it doesn't feel that way at all. I bump into an American guy, whatever. I bump into some Germans, whatever. Yeah, it's big enough to swallow them. Yeah,
it's foreigner. I won't even say foreigner friendly. It's just that no one cares.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like whereas in Candelaria, it's got that vibe that there are certain people who go into La Candelaria, we'll say natives, knowing this is where the foreigners arrive. This is where we can kind of...
or the Zona T.
Exactly, yeah. The other extreme, in a sense, yeah.
Yeah, a different kind of foreigner, definitely. I got in trouble on Facebook for suggesting that the Zona T was mainly full of corrupt locals and slimy foreigners. Which I
that wouldn't be like you. That wouldn't be like you at all. We might finish the... No comment. I go to Zona T every weekend. Zona T here in Santandercito. No, I was going to say, to finish on a topic for Chapinero that is close to your heart, and I want to make it close to my heart as well, if I can. Second-hand shops. There are a number of those around that area. Yep. And I've seen plenty of people ask about this, even if it's just for donating clothes or whatever, or also shopping in second-hand. So it's around the 50...
about 50. That's a big section. But there's also a couple just north of Lourdes on the Once, as it is there. And of course, there's the antique streets, sort of coming off of Hippies. By the way, Distrito Gallina, fantastically good sort of drunk takeaway food just off of Hippies on Antique Street. Great place.
And by the way, but Angela, cheers for that. Yeah, cigarrerias, of course, and I have drunk in a number of cigarrerias in Chapinero over the years, and there are plenty of them. There was one called Finlandia, which was actually quite popular.
Yes.
I think it's probably still on the go, to watch a game or two. But one thing then that you would not be in favour of, Ollie, if I'm correct in placing this in Chapinero, the section of the street on Caracas where there are pets for sale, loads of pets.
Yeah, not massive fan of that. Some of those places, some of the fish stores are ethical, but I'm not a fan of anywhere that has puppies and kittens in cages.
Yeah. Well, look, we packed a lot in there, guys. Thanks for all your comments.
Just to let everyone know, just let you know, Peru will continue with 10 men. So it looks like probably game over for Peru tonight.
Commentators curse. We'll come back with the answer next week, and we'll know how they got on against Argentina as well. Guys, we got to go. Our producer is saying no more. Thanks for watching. Next week. Ciao, ciao.